Hello, welcome back. I'm Maria Ressa. Got a little bit of sleep. How are you guys doing? It is less than 45 minutes away before the polls close. If you are online, stay online. If you are running there, get there before it closes. 12 hours of voting. You're talking about 61.8 million registered voters, and we're going to elect 18,000 positions. There are 36,000 polling precincts that are about to close in less than 45 minutes. So, joining us here, we've got University of the Philippines political science professor Jean Pilapil, along with Lian Buan. I'm going to say our justice reporter because I see you that way all the time, but Camille Elemia, who is normally at the Senate, but they've both been on the campaign trail. Last 45 minutes. Professor, tell me, what is at stake in these elections?
Well, there, as you said, there are 18,000 posts. But the most important posts that are at stake would be the 12 Senate seats, because that would actually complete the picture of the upper house. And together they compose the Congress. And that would determine the characteristic of the 18th Congress Senate, and would determine whether Duterte would be successful, not only in his legislative agenda, but also his constitutional agenda. Because for the past, since the 35 Constitution and also the 87 Constitution, the Senate has served as the most important institutional stumbling block for both the legislative and constitutional agenda of the Philippine president. This has something to do with the institutional design of our upper house, which is unique from other upper houses in the world, because our senators are nationally elected. And because of that, that determines the nature, not only the mandate, constituency, and ambitions, but also how we elect our senators.
Interesting. Aside from that, though, I mean, in terms of the way that the Constitution designed our checks and balances, how would you characterize, what is the health of the checks and balances of our system of governance today?
Well, the majority right now actually has not exercised its mandate to actually check on the president in terms of the power of the president. For example, the martial law powers, the Senate simply played along.
Right.
Okay, on the EJK investigation, okay, it has basically it has conducted an investigation, but it's half-hearted. But then on the other hand, in terms of the blocking the positive institutional or legislative agenda of the Philippine president, the Senate, simply by foot bragging in terms of reaction to the legislative agenda of the president, has in many ways slowed down the legislative process for the Philippine president. Okay? And the most important here, okay, beyond the legislative, is the constitutional agenda. The constitutional overhaul project of the Philippine president actually failed because the senators did not play along. Okay? And that defeated the federalism project of Duterte in the 17th Congress.
And in this one, what's at stake? If we lose an independent Senate, what happens next?
Much has been said about the Senate actually losing independence, okay, total control by President Duterte, but that has to be qualified.
Please.
As of now, there would be 6 members of the opposition, and 2 are being contested, or there 2 would be leaving and must be replaced. That would be Antonio Trillanes, and the other one would be for re-election, Bam Aquino.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that would have been the strategy. At the very least, the minimum goal of the opposition is to retain those 2 seats.
Right.
But as the elections have shaped up, okay, it seems like that Maro will not make it based on the surveys, and Bam Aquino is at the tail end of this process. And largely, this is because President Duterte has been very lucky. Okay, luck has smiled upon him again, because we're conducting the election at the height of his popularity. Mm-hmm. He is again at the all-time high of his popularity.
81% according to Pulse Asia.
And plus 66% if we're going to use the SWS. If the election was actually done last year, where Duterte was at the lowest in terms of his popularity, using SWS surveys on satisfaction rating, it would have been probably a different game because the train load effect of the inflation
Correct.
would have been felt. Both Bam Aquino ran on an anti-train load platform, and Maro has presented himself as the economist. This strategy would have worked in 2018, but in 2019 we have a different ballgame because of the um, phenomenal recovery of the satisfaction rating of President Duterte.
Leon, you talked about the Duterte magic. What exactly is that?
Well, I saw personally from the campaign trail how they struggled. And I saw also when I covered the local race how other candidates would want to have Duterte by their side. Like for example, in Quezon City, Joy Belmonte jumped ship from Liberal Party to PDP Laban. And even if PDP Laban didn't choose her to be its official candidate for the local race, she would still make that a main message in her campaign, like, I have the support of not only President Duterte, but also Sara Duterte. So you know that the Duterte endorsement is really coveted. And so I saw that this is really about Duterte. And probably for the opposition, they would also say that, yes, this is about Duterte. And so our messaging should be, this is reject Duterte policies. And to be able to do that, then vote for us.
Right. That's what you think it should have been? Reject.
That's what I saw, at least mainly from the labor wing candidates and the 6 lesser-known candidates of Ocho Derecho, because as Professor said, Bam Aquino ran on an anti-train campaign, or the laws he was able to push for, like free tuition, and Mar presented himself as the economist. They weren't as much anti-Duterte as the other 6 were.
Right. Camille, you're with a lot of them in the Senate. You know, it seems like the more experienced politicians deliberately avoided clashing with President Duterte. Was that your observation?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it would be a career suicide for them if they do that, especially for those senators who have future political plans, like including this 2019 election. So now we're seeing re-electionist. Of the 7 re-electionist senators, only Senator Bam Aquino is from the minority. But at the same time, when you look at his voting record, I mean, he's against train law, against death penalty, and many other legislations backed by the president. But when it comes to the laws signed by President Duterte, which are also included in the legislative agenda of the president, I mean, like, since the campaign started, he's also in favor of that. So it's not entirely saying that Duterte's doing, I mean, everything Duterte's doing is bad, because when it comes to issues, he would rather stick to the issues, not like other opposition senators, like Senator Trillanes and De Lima. Yeah, for Bam, it's like, maybe, I'm just thinking, maybe as him, I mean, like, there's a campaign to win, so we can't really antagonize totally the president.
But it also meant no one actively going head-on against a very popular leader. That's also correct, right? Even if the values that are there are challenging Filipino values. Is this too elitist a question when you're on the campaign trail?
Well, the 2 most popular candidates of Ocho Derecho, which would have had the bigger platform, or they would have had the bigger voices or the louder voices. They didn't really contend Duterte that much. So the role went to the 6 lesser-known candidates. But I mean,
they didn't have enough clout.
They didn't have enough clout. So if Mar says it or Bam says it, it would have been more powerful. It would have been a more powerful message.
But they weren't willing to take the risk. Is that correct? Camille, you had a tough time on coverage. You talked about this a little bit earlier. You're special. Why and what did you do?
So I was assigned to cover PDP Laban. I think it came with the territory because I was covering the Senate, and of course the president of the party, Senator Coco Pimentel. So even before the elections came, I was already following them. And then the Rappler ban happened. Initially it was just you and Pia, and now it extended to all Rappler journalists nationwide. So that meant I would be having a really hard time covering the PDP Laban campaign, and honestly, it did not disappoint because every time I would cover a rally, it's really anxiety-inducing because I had this experience. It wasn't even the campaign yet, and I was a personal guest at the PDP Laban event. It's not even the party, it's just the humanitarian arm of the party. I was a guest of a wife of a politician, and I was there just to witness it. And then Amaro, it's the media accreditation officer, asked me to leave. So since then, I already knew what was coming ahead of me come 2019. So now what I do is I just try to be as plain as possible so as not to stand out from the public, because once they see me, I know they'd ask me to leave. So what I do is that if they say the schedule starts at 2 p.m., I have to be there at 10 or 11 a.m. because I have to fall in line. I have to go by the public entrance, and that meant 1 to 2 hours of falling in line. And I've come to learn that I should not bring ball pens, water, or anything because they'll just be confiscated. So basically, it's just the whole process of it is very stressful because once I get in, it's not the end of it.
Right.
Because I have to be careful that the media officers or PSG won't recognize me. I think for the PSG, it's easy because when I covered Malacanang, they had a different PSG. But for the media officers, I covered Aquino and they know me.
Right, right.
So that's the challenge. I would wear glasses, I would wear hats. So sometimes I question myself, am I doing the right thing? But then
Are.
I just keep on thinking, if I don't do this, it's just I'm being complicit to what they're doing and that they're winning, because it's not just about the president or what he wants or who he doesn't like, because it's ultimately, I feel like initially I felt violated because hindi lang naman ako Rappler journalist. I'm also a voter and I have to hide just to get into an event that should be open to the public and in a free society, supposed free society. So parang I felt it was really a struggle at first. But then, as with any other event in Rappler, even if it's hard, you just have to wake up each day and fight. So hanggang gumising na lang ako after 90 days. And
I want to go back to you, but I want to show you some photos that are back from Pia Ranada in Davao City at Hukbong. And you can see a little bit of, I want photos from Camille as well in this, but do you see Pia? This
there's
is
Pia.
Pia.
Oh my gosh.
And Camille talked a little bit about having to wear a hat, right? This is at the Hukbong Meeting de Avance.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that, obviously it looks like they do know who she is. She's been allowed to stay at this part, but the police are right behind her. Let me show you a few more. Here's Pia, and again, I can only say, Camille, this must be you, right? A police officer watching her while, and this guy looks like a plainclothes guy, also watching her while she continues to do her job. I really like the hat. It must be a fashion statement from Rapplers nowadays. And here we go. Here she is. It was a rainy day. This was, just a short while ago. And again, in the same way that, to be transparent, Rappler has been banned. I've been arrested twice. I've posted bail 8 times. Here, this was an interesting one because you can see, and we'll be talking to Pia. She's in Davao City now. She watched Bongo vote. President Duterte also has just voted. What is it like? You must not have felt the same way, but when Maro comes at you in this way, when the officers are there, you talked a little bit about how you felt. Why do you keep going?
because I feel like I still have to do my job. I want to do my job. And I feel the people, I'd like to give them the information so that they can make informed choices come election day. And I don't like them to win in the sense that this is exactly what they want Rappler to do, so that we'll just stop doing our jobs and just propaganda na lang nila. So I just wake up every day. Although I swear every day before I go there, I really don't know what will happen to me. But I just pray that nothing bad happens, and that when I go there, I'll just wait and wait and wait and prepare and prepare and prepare and I just find the nearest exit so that whatever happens, I'll just run to it.
People ask me, given the intimidation and harassment that we faced, why why do you talk about keeping going, right? Why not leave it? I mean, you don't have a case. Well, we collectively do, right? Why do you? And you, rule of law. First, for you, what made you decide to keep fighting? And for you, how do you look at the justice system that's
Well, as I wrote a newsletter, I think a day ago, and I asked, should the rule of law be an election issue? And I said, of course, absolutely. And I said, it may be the only election issue there ever is, because everything that we do is about the law. Whether it's the Congress or the Supreme Court or the executive, everything we do is about the law. And once the rule of law is not upheld, then everything crumbles one step at a time.
at? I've repeatedly stated that we seem to be moving it. Jean, you've heard what we've gone through. We're special. There was also a list of other media, independent media, that was given by the presidential spokesman, saying it came from President Duterte. President Duterte just voted, and he started talking about how foreign media have foreign funding. Duterte on Vera files President Ellen Tordesillas. If you can come to me here on our live blog, you can see he said that she is every inch a prostitute. So right after he voted, guys, control. If you can come to my screen, you can see this. Right after voting, right here, Duterte fixates on the media he says are using Western funds. Professional twister, bayad yan sila, maniwala ka, they cannot organize without the money of the Western. Sana okay siya sa grammar. But, and then Duterte on Vera files President Ellen Tordesillas. She is every inch a prostitute. Jean, where is press freedom, and what do you make of these?
Well, Duterte is tightening the screws on press freedom, clearly. And it takes a page from the book of Putin. This has already been raised by critics, that what Putin has done is actually to flatten the civil society in Russia, which
That's
was
correct.
not robust, which was not thick to begin with.
Right.
Our civil society is thicker, but setbacks have been done for the past 3 years under Duterte. But the enigma of Duterte is that even as we feel the democratic backsliding, in fact, it's not just democratic backsliding, but it's democratic deconsolidation already, wherein deconsolidation happens when relevant political forces actually withdraw compliance with democratic rules. And in our context, the most important political force is the president,
The most powerful
and the most
political
powerful,
force,
the most
right?
determined.
Right.
And in fact, we saw that in the current elections. And he's the one saying that the Constitution is just a piece of paper for me. But the enigma of Philippine democracy right now is that the highest satisfaction rating for democracy, as recorded by SWS, is under Duterte. Okay,
When we say that, the interpretation of that is that there is far more grassroots involvement in democracy. Would you say that's, or is there a different one?
It's actually just a general question asked by SWS. Are you
Okay.
satisfied with how democracy is functioning in the country? And we thought that under Noynoy, it was already phenomenal at 80%. But under Duterte, September 9, 2016, it's 86%. Currently, it's 84%. So even as the indicators, objective indicators of democracy for Philippines, like the Freedom House,
Right.
every year we have lost at least 1 point. We
Same
were
with the World
65.
Press Freedom Index,
World Press
right? We keep dropping.
I think we lost 6 points or something.
Six the first year, and then just this year another drop.
And then Lian mentioned rule of law.
Correct.
We're
We
actually the
dropped
biggest
again.
loser at 18 points.
Right.
Okay. This year we did not move. Okay, but 2017 we lost 17 points. Okay, so all the quantitative indicators would point to a clear democratic backsliding. But come the surveys,
Right.
okay, people are actually very happy and satisfied with how democracy is
But this is
functioning.
it's interesting. It's a little bit of Back to the Future in 1972 when martial law was declared. After everyone was arrested, the people, man on the street, actually felt exactly the same way, that things are better.
It's not only the man on the street, actually with Marcos, although we did not have surveys, it's the middle class that supported
Right.
martial law.
Right.
We thought that the middle class changed under 1986 because of the middle class revolution. It was urban-based, okay, it was middle class. But then the Duterte phenomenon, okay, is also middle class and ABC phenomenon.
Yes.
I was talking about Duterte, Fortuna against Miles on Duterte in 2019. The high satisfaction, record rating now is in Mindanao. Uh, he has an new record high in the ABC class, okay, for satisfaction rating, as well as the D class. It's the E where he actually drops in the rating.
And he dropped largely also.
7 points.
Okay, and that's also because of a drug war, right? I mean, the E has been hit, at least in the NCR
Yes.
part.
Although
Yeah.
he recovers from time to time, but
Okay.
probably this would be still the effect of the inflation, okay, the train law. But in terms of the effect of the train law, the country has basically moved on. Okay, and that's why I was saying Duterte is again lucky, and I don't believe in the invincibility that some analysts are offering in terms of the Duterte phenomenon or the Duterte magic. Okay, the Duterte magic is there. Okay, but like any political events, this would be determined by the context. It would, as I've said, it would have been different if the elections happened in 2018, where
What you're saying is a lot is going to be determined by economics.
the one of the what's this goal now is to explain the satisfaction rating of Duterte, why is it so strong, and even with this democracy satisfaction. And one indicator would be the economic well-being, how Filipinos feel, what's happening with their economy. And NSWS has 3 beautiful surveys on this, but very powerful surveys on the net gainers, which measures people who actually think that their lives have improved, the quality of their lives improved for the past 12 months. That would be the net gainers.
Correct.
Then the net optimists, meaning that it's not just looking forward.
Right,
Okay,
right.
in the next 12 months, would your life improve?
Right.
And then the third one would be the net economic optimist,
Okay.
which is not personal,
Right.
but how the economy will improve.
And what did we see?
And all indicators have recovered for 2019, whereas in 2018, they have been set back. I have the details. We could go into that later.
Well, I'm interested also, is that partly because of the election spend? There's certainly a lot of money. If every candidate has spent over 100 million, I mean, if you just look at the estimate of PCIJ in terms of just bongo spending at 400 million pesos, right? Before election campaign spending actually began. Is that partly buoyed by the election spend? It's economics. It goes down to the money.
Could be. Okay, but the recovery of Duterte actually starts by the third quarter of 2018. Okay, so from something like 45, it becomes 56
Right.
in the next quarter, then 60, then 66. I think inflation has a lot to do with this. Okay,
Economics.
because with inflation, the effect of inflation is that you feel it immediately. If you have 100 pesos, you go out to buy rice, and the rice prices go up. Okay, you can't buy, if you intend to buy 3 kilos, you
Right.
could only buy 2 kilos. So in that context, the effect of inflation politically, is very costly for the administration. Economic growth is different. Economic growth, you can't feel it immediately. Okay, it would take some time. And in that context, that's why the inflation was a key factor in 2018, and to the extent that it starts to cool down by late 2018, and then by 2019, it's quite low. People actually return to that momentum, on seeing the economy and their personal lives actually improving. It did not start with Duterte.
Right.
It started in the probably last 2 years
Correct.
of Binay Aquino.
Let me quickly take you through. Can we go to my computer? This shows you what inflation means for you, right? And I just want to show you our calculator in case you want to figure out what that is. So we actually posted this. If you take a look, right, the big spike, inflation interest over time. Select an amount, the value of past pesos and more recent pesos by using this calculator, right? So let's just say we have, let's say, 5,000 pesos. Right? And let's say it was in the year that Mayor Duterte took over Davao. So enter a year between 1957 and 2011. He became mayor of Davao. If you compute it, your 5,000 pesos in 1988 is now equivalent to, would buy the same amount of goods as 25,126 pesos today. So that rises in inflation. This just shows you, if you go down here, you can take a look at what your 5,000 pesos could buy, the CPI, what goes into the consumer price index. All right, it is now 5:41 p.m., 19 minutes before. Let's go back, let's go to our live updates and take a look, see what's happening. You can see, here we go, the San Leonardo Councilor Nathaniel Yap, he votes for councilor. The VCM at 5:26 was shutting down in Leyte. We've been going in and out of Leyte. A fact check on this one, Facebook post that Iloilo's Goricetas junk Biron. Goriceta camp have abandoned gubernatorial bet. The broken VCM at White Plains. Bansa muna, bago income, sabi nito. This is earlier at the start. At 5:30, the transparency server is going down to 0. Here you go. Duterte signs a classroom chair. President Duterte voted, signs the wooden classroom chair on which he cast his vote in 2016 after voting today. Wow. So there's still campaign materials. So far today, most of the complaints have been about the VCM machines, right? Either they're malfunctioning. Here's President Duterte filling up his ballot and voting. This is normal for the VCMs, what we used to call the PCOS machines in 2016, for them to actually have malfunctioned and for this to have come through. Do you remember the delays this year compared to 2016? I mean, how does it compare?
I started covering in 2013, and I think this election has the most number of problematic VCMs because usually the stressful time for those covering the canvassing would come later in the day. But as early as morning, I mean, former Vice President Jejo Marbina, as early as, 7 a.m., wasn't able to vote. So parang, I don't know what happened. I mean, why we have this recurring problem, and it even got worse when we all know that every 3 years there will be elections and that it's the same machines that we used in the last elections. I don't know what happened. Where we lack in the preparation.
It's interesting because some of the delays were as much as 3 months and we were down to the wire, right? But last night, a lot of the reports on vote buying, Bingbong Crisologo being arrested, the NBI coming into Navotas. And again, this idea that authorities, that even the running after vote buying was becoming used as a tool. Have you heard about this today?
I read from Rappler.
Thank you for reading
Although
Rappler.
I experienced in our UP Village precinct, there were 2 machines that's comped out.
Today.
Yeah, and I never experienced that before. So I agree with Camille. Although that's anecdotal, it's just my experience.
And also for the cases of vote buying, I mean, there are sporadic instances in the past, but ngayon, I mean, a day before the elections and everything's cropping up na inaaresto over vote buying. And both of these are claiming that it's the allowance for the poll watchers list. So I don't, this is the first time I'm seeing this pattern. But I've only covered 2013 and 2016 and 2019.
Your thoughts today of voting turnout? It's expected to be high, but from the time that voting has become automated, we've always had high voting turnout, right? In 2010, it was as high as 77%, 74%. 2013 was 77%, and 2016 went up to 82%. Do you think Filipinos went out to vote today?
I would suppose because of the dynamism of the local elections, and Camille mentioned vote buying. I think if we are going to analyze Quezon City, this is the first contest real contest that we're having. Herbert Bautista for a long time, Kaya did not have any real opponent. And so the Crisologo versus Joy Belmonte contest is more intense than the ones we had in Quezon City.
Yes.
So I could not speak for other local elections or other places, but in Quezon City, it's more intense than usual.
Jean, very interesting. What some of our analysts have said that what we're seeing, partly because Mayor Duterte spent so much time in Davao, is that these local tactics for elections have been pushed up to the national level. So Commissioner Guanzon, for example, last night said that vote buying, when she was looking at it, had more than doubled the reports of it. Not just because Comelec had a special effort on it, but that it seemed that it was far more, the Tagalog word is garapal, right? Our reporters were getting reports that people were getting called to the basketball court. It's no longer hiding in your home and giving you your money to vote. It is come on over to the basketball court and it's in plain sight. Local tactics, national. Is this guns, goons, and gold? I mean, 1986 was a long time ago.
It would be important to study what are the dynamics driving this. But I think the president actually mentioned in one of his speeches that it's okay to get the money. Okay, was it?
Yeah,
I also read that from Rappler.
Thank you for reading Rappler. See?
And I think Judge Junjun Binay also said that just get the money but still vote for me. So it's
There might be something like a modeling effect in terms of local tactics. And, in many ways, as you said, President Duterte is still Mayor Duterte.
Yes. And he likes being called mayor still.
And he speaks like a mayor.
He
and
does. He manages like a mayor. Yeah.
And this is a strategy still as a mayor, trying to elbow out your opponent in that kind of strongman tactic that you don't see usually, or we didn't see at the national level, or at least someone successful at the national level. And local politicians might actually taking their cue from this. So one would have actually been surprised that it's a free-for-all at the local level in terms of tactics. The tactics that you try to actually hide,
Right.
they actually have been more blatant or been more obvious.
Even the idea of utang na loob, right? Normally, people would say that, but then would hide it. Would be embarrassed that if they're appointing people because of utang na loob, they wouldn't say it. President Duterte says right out, utang na loob, and then appoints or does things like the Marcos burial.
Ironically, at times this is romanticized as saying that that President Duterte is authentic, when in fact it's simply being brushed. So the discourse on authenticity is actually displaced, I think, on a proper assessment of where we are now in terms of democratic discourse.
Professor Pilapil, your last thoughts on where will we go as the vote count begins in about 10 minutes time? Well, not the count, the polls close, right?
In terms of electoral administration, or
Where
we are in
terms of as a nation, let's pull it up that way.
I think that it has been raised that the concern that if the opposition will be wiped out, meaning BAM and MAR do not make it, there would be just 4 members of the opposition.
In
one
jail.
is practically
One is
disabled
one
by
is
the
even in
detention.
jail. So in that context, the only hope that we have is the institutional characteristic of the Senate as a foot dragger, against the Philippine president, because the Senate is the only nationally elected institution of this country. We have only the president and the Senate. The party list is nationally elected also, but it's just 20% of the lower house, and they just get 2 to 3% of the votes. Nothing like the senators, who get Laila de Lima, I think, had 14 million,
Yes.
and she was the last. So any senator can actually claim a national mandate and could stand up to the president.
Yes.
So I don't buy the idea again that Duterte will have a clear path to federalism, because that actually overreads, okay, the strength of the president vis-a-vis the senators, and underreads the ambitions, okay, as well as the mandate of the senators as they see themselves.
And based on, like, I've been covering the Senate for 7 years, and based on my observation, senators don't like to be dictated. Maybe they want to talk to the president about certain, negotiations, but they don't want to appear like they were dictated by the president. Ma-pride yan eh. And that's why in the Senate, they call it merong 24 separate republics in the Senate, because each of the senator was nationally elected. They feel they're at the same level as the president, co-equal in a way. So that's it. And also when it comes to federalism, another issue there is that are the senators willing to kill themselves? Because once we have charter change, there's no assurance that the Senate will still be there the way it is.
It's going to be a regional Senate, okay? And the Puno proposal is that there would only be 2 per region. As of now, we have 14 senators coming from NCR. So there's no way that all of them could be accommodated. Okay, if I may just add about
Please.
the fact that the ones who have a chance of being elected right now, in the last Pulse Asia survey, 11 out of 15 are incumbents or former senators. Although they have been endorsed, many of them have been endorsed by Duterte or the daughter, I don't think that they really see themselves as fully indebted to Duterte for their victory. Okay, although this is a midterm elections, and we call it a midterm because it refers to the midterm of the president, one has to understand also that these are senators that are running for re-election, okay, or returning for election, and therefore have their own name recall independent of the president. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah. Please, your last thoughts, Professor Pilapil.
It's going to be sad, okay, that if Duterte would control more of the Senate. But again, the institutional characteristics of the Senate, okay, would prevent Duterte from having an easy control of the Senate, as mentioned by Camille.
Yes.
In that context. What is more interesting now is what happens in 2022. Because I think the other more important thing that happened is I see this as a dry run for the 2022 elections, and apparent heir, okay, would be most probably Sara Duterte. What is another unique situation for Philippine democracy is that we have the only strong man in the world who has a daughter who's an electoral force herself and could probably succeed her if she wants. And that would now again lessen the effort to change the constitution to allow Duterte for a second term, or to avoid accountability for what has happened or what is happening for the thousands of extrajudicial killings. Other strongmen like Putin does not have a apparent successor.
They don't want to retain a democracy, right?
well-
But can I ask you, and this has to be my last question, because we're chasing the closing of the polls. Timothy Snyder in On Tyranny writes about how dictatorships and authoritarian rule actually happens, how fascism happens. It grows out of a democracy. One party takes over, splinters the society, creates an us against them, and runs after this. Are you seeing something like this happening?
In our context, it's inherent to democracy that it's only a procedural process, and someone who actually wins actually gets to decide. In the context of the Philippines, I hear Rappler talk about this creeping authoritarianism. The current characteristics of Philippine democracy is that the strongman politics, the brand of strongman politics of Duterte, is actually reinforced by strong public support. As I've said,
Right.
this is the highest approval rating again of Duterte. And then what is really frightening is that it is constantly, or it is renewed now, by strong electoral victory. Okay, so it is democracy, okay, actually tying a noose around its neck in a way.
Gosh, that is a difficult thought to think about, but that could be what's at stake. Thank you so much, University of the Philippines, Professor Jean.
My privilege, Maria.
Wonderful having you here. While we switch, please, I want to ask the two ladies. Professor Pilapil talked about authenticity of Duterte and how authenticity goes right into social media. Please, either one of you, the role that social media has played in